Hey guys, well, welcome in. We're here to paint with you again. Kirsten will be painting this awesome floral this evening. So yeah, like Jimena said, if you guys do end up posting or painting along with Kirsten tonight, I see a lot of people are set up, ready to go. So we're glad to have you guys in. If you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat for me. Kirsten will definitely be on your side as far as reminding you what colors she's using, and she will go as slow as she can to get through this technique with you. So we are here to help you get a great painting tonight. So I'll let Kirsten take it away.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. So everything that Dylan said, we're super excited for you guys to be here. We are painting this little floral right here. So whenever I paint, I tell everybody, and I hope this is a good thing. My goal is that you have a beautiful painting, but my goal, even more important, is that you just learn some techniques or some different styles of painting if you're way more advanced or if it's your first time. I want it to look a little bit like this, but I always say, take it to where it's your own. If these pink flowers, you want them to be peach. If these pink flowers over here, you want those to be purple. If you want your background to be really dark brown or dark green or just black, really have fun with it. Follow along, of course, but technique is what I love to teach. So I'm going to go over the supplies real quick before we get started. So we are using an 11 by 14 canvas, not base coated, just plain from Michael's. And then we are using a few different folk art paints. So always black and white. Make sure you've got black and white. And then I'm using two pink peach colors. I'm using FolkArt Magenta and FolkArt Crushed Coral, a really pretty salmon and a really pretty kind of rich dark pink. I'm using a yellow ochre, which I always say, if you don't have the exact colors, any yellow will work. Any even more of a tan gold would work. I'm using two blues, navy blue, which is my all-time favorite folk art color, and then Cayman Blue, which is just a really pretty, almost a soft turquoise, and then a dark green, which is hunter green. And then I'm using this beautiful kind of dirty aqua, which is called sky blue. So those are the colors of folk art that we're using today. And I called out for a basic brush set. A CraftSmart brush set is available at Michael's. And the main thing I want to say, if you don't have that exact brush set, make sure you have a base coat brush. Make sure you have kind of a medium flat brush, which this is a 1/2 inch, and then maybe a little bit smaller flat brush. And this is a 10. We're going to be doing most everything with that. So you can just view that as a small, medium, and large flat brush. But then have 1 or 2 little brushes. It could be a round brush from the set. It could be a little liner. This is, a little number 2 flat brush. Just 1 smaller brush. So make sure you guys have water, paper towels, and a palette. If you use a glass plate or a plastic plate, any palette will work. And we always, whenever I teach these classes, we don't apply a pattern, because someone taught me years ago, when you follow a pattern, you're basically more color book painting. And so to get the best out of the techniques is we never apply a pattern. So I know in every class people ask. And a blow dryer. I don't think this was on the supply list, which I apologize for that, but run and grab a blow dryer. The main reason is in an hour, we want you to get to all the fun stuff, and we want to work on a dry base coat. So we're going to base coat everything and then dry it with the blow dryer. Okay. So with that said, we're going to get started. Any crazy questions, Dylan, about supplies before I get going?
No, I see everyone gathering their supplies from their desks, and I think everybody's ready to paint.
Yay, I love it. So I am going to make sure you can see my painting, but I'm going to squeeze this in as much as I can. They both don't fit on the screen because I want you guys just to have it for reference. Okay, so the very first boring thing that we are going to do is we are going to base coat our canvas in the navy blue. And the reason why I love to base coat in a dark color first and then add color to the top is because having that under color that's dark gives you all of this really modern dimension. It gives you all of that, which looks like hours of shading and highlighting. It's really just because your base coat and your first color is a really dark color. It could be a dark green, it could be a dark plum, it could be even solid black, but I just love the navy. So all I'm doing is a really even coat. I'm using my largest flat brush with the CraftSmart set that we called for. I think that's maybe a 3/4 inch brush. Yes. So I'm just doing a nice even base coat of the navy. You can see the coverage is gorgeous. So we'll only need to do one coat. And really the only thing that matters here is you don't want any areas where the paint is really thick. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. It doesn't have to be the best base coat you've ever done, because we're going to be painting right over it with our fun floral. But you just don't want to have any areas that are going to take a lot longer to dry. I always say do to the edge what you do to the top, because these stretch canvases at Michael's are just, the quality is great and all the staples are gone. So you don't even really have to add a frame to it when we're all done to hang it on your wall.
Kirsten, as you're doing that, we have so many people painting along. I'm watching them all in their spaces, and it's awesome to see everybody base coating together.
I love that so much. I get jealous of that view. I don't get any of that. So don't overthink your base coat. Just make sure you don't have any areas where there's a lot of extra paint built up. I actually used a little more paint than I need. Just a nice even coat. All right, while everyone is base coating, I am gonna just put the blow dryer over that and get that dry. Acrylics dry really fast on their own. That's why they're such a fabulous paint to work with, but they still, for this 1 hour class, they need a little boost. So once you guys are done base coating, just blow dry it and make sure that every area is dry so that we can do the fun stuff. Okay, here I go. Oh, that took a minute. I might have done that longer than I needed to, just because it's a beautiful spring day here in Georgia. It's what, Dylan? We just ate dinner outside. It's maybe like 70. But our office believes that if it's sunny and it's almost spring, they turn the AC on like 50. So I used this to heat up a little bit. I'm gonna admit that. All right, how's everyone's base coat coming?
Good. Just as a reminder, we're using navy blue. If you're just joining, this video will be posted later on Michael's YouTube channel. Jimena has added that in the chat here. So if you want to see that playlist, you can go to that link.
Okay. So I am going to keep going, keep base coating, because all we're going to do is just kind of get started on our painting. So make sure it's dry. You can see it's not perfect, like that area, that is all okay. Don't add a second coat. You just want a dark canvas. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of Wicker White on my palette, and just a little, because what we are actually going to do is we're going to grab that smaller flat brush. This is a number 6. We're not going to add any water, and we're barely going to pick up any paint. We are going to simply dry brush the basic shapes of our design. And the reason we're doing this is just to give you guys some confidence and to give me some confidence on where I'm going to place everything. So I like to view everything as a shape. So the vase, for example, is like a little egg missing the top, but the general shape is an egg. These flowers, just a circle, another circle. This one is the same circle, but falling off the top of the canvas. These are smaller circles. So we're not going to place every element and every detail that you see. We're just going to place the big basic shapes. And we're doing it in white with very little paint so that we get a really, really soft, almost like a chalk line. Can you guys see that? A really, really soft line that just represents where each element is going to be. Can you guys see that? Sometimes it's hard to see on the screen.
Yep, that's showing up well.
So very little paint. So that is our vase. And then I'm going to have one big flower here. So I'm just going to kind of mark where that is with just an irregular circle. And then I'm going to jump over to here. But you can see it's all going to be covered up. We just want to have a confident place. So barely any paint. So those are my 2 big pink flowers, knowing that I'm going to do one here that kind of falls off the top of the canvas. And then these little peach, can you see those? These little peach guys are a little bit smaller, but I'm going to put one maybe right about here. So just a little circle, barely picking up any paint, and maybe one about there. And then I know I've got one over here on this side. So I'm going to put one right there. And then maybe just a few stems or leaves. Again, I'm not going to create a pattern for everything because we're going to cover it up, but I'm going to put those 2 leaves on there maybe. And this is the top of my vase. And I kind of want them coming out in front of my vase. So I'm just going to represent those 2 big leaves and then maybe a stem or 2. So I know I want a little piece of greenery. Oh, I need a little bit more paint. Maybe a little stem of greenery coming out there. And maybe one coming out right there. But I'm not going to pattern those individual leaves at all. And knowing I've got one over here, maybe I'll do one more coming down right there. So it's not much of a pattern. It's a little bit messy. But what it does is it just allows you to kind of have some confidence on where you're going to start building the elements and your design. All right, so now I'm gonna get my biggest flat brush after my base coat. And this is a 1/2-inch flat brush. And I tell people, if you're more comfortable with the 1/2-inch or something a little bit smaller, like the number 10, use whatever you're most comfortable with. And I'm gonna take the magenta and I'm gonna add that to my palette. And then I'm going to add this beautiful crushed coral. Not using any water on my brushes. I like to use a dry brush. And if you did clean it in the water, the only key to this type of painting is make sure you get most of the water off on a paper towel. So I'm going to just kind of flip-flop between the 10 and the 1/2-inch, depending on what I'm most comfortable with. So I'm going to start with the 10. And I'm just going to load that magenta on there. And all I'm going to do just to start, because I don't want to have a solid kind of a color booked edge on my big pink flowers. So using the entire flat edge, I'm just going to do almost like little squares, really, little petals, strokes all the way around that little pattern that I created. And you guys, this is actually going to show it beautifully. I'm going to hold it up a little bit. See how each stroke, there's more paint, less paint, a little bit less, but you get that navy coming through. You want that. You don't want each stroke to be so much paint on your brush that you completely cover up that navy. Because the reason this painting is going to have so much dimension is because all of that dark background is coming through. Does that make sense? And you're going to do that same thing on all three. And you can see because our pattern or our white shapes is so thin, that color covers right over that. You never want to work to cover up a pattern. That's why we did it with such a little bit of paint on our brush. But all I'm doing is creating those outside edges of these large pink flowers. And the only tip is don't cover up all of the navy, because all of that coming through is kind of a way to cheat shading and highlighting. And it also makes your flower look really organic because it's not a base coated shape. All right. Now I'm going to pick up my 1/2-inch brush, which keep the number 10 if you're comfortable. And I'm going to load that with that crushed coral, no water and not too much paint. And I'm going to do that same stroke, but maybe a little bit longer on these little flowers. So I'm just using the entire flat edge and just pulling that towards the center. You're just creating a really cute little daisy. Let the stroke and the brush create the edge of that flower, because you don't want each one to be exactly the same. You don't want the spacing between each petal to be exactly the same. You can see navy comes through more on some, less on others. And that is exactly what you want.
We had a few people asking if they didn't have crushed coral, what they could mix. And I suggested a little bit of red, a little bit of white, and a little bit of orange.
Absolutely. You could, if you had this yellow ochre and this magenta, and you're working with the same palette we have, you just don't have the crushed coral. You could do a ton of white with a little bit of both of those, and you could get pretty darn close.
Perfect.
All I'm doing is picking up that magenta and adding just a few more strokes. And no rhyme or reason, not creating a pattern like tiles in your kitchen, but just really moving that brush all around, doing that same basic stroke. But you want most of that flower area to be colored in. I'm going to clean that number 10 brush in the water and remove all the excess water on a paper towel. And then I'm going to get some of that hunter green onto my palette. I'm going to take a little bit of white, so maybe 3 parts hunter green to 1 part of the white, and just mix a shade a little bit lighter. And once that's mixed next to your little dollop of green, I'm going to not go in the water, but I'm just going to remove a lot of that extra paint from mixing on my paper towel. And then all I'm going to do is picking up the dark hunter green. I'm going to do just more like a dry brush. So all I'm going to do is base coat this large leaf, but not picking up so much paint that the navy disappears. The key to this whole technique is always letting that navy peek through no matter what color you're using. But you can see I covered up the white pattern that we created and just kind of gave a home base to those leaves. Now we did not make a pattern here, everybody, but you can see I've got 2 little leaves up here off this pink flower. I've got 1 over here. So I am going to just freehand those, knowing I've got a little hole there. I'm going to do a little leaf. I'm going to add a little bit of that light green just so you guys can see it better. But see how you get the texture of the canvas and the navy blue because you're not using too much paint. So I added 2 little leaves up there. And I'm going to sneak over here and add 1 right here just because we've got a good amount of open space. Going back and forth from the light green to the dark green, but not too much paint. I'm going to cover up this white stem just to start building the basic elements of our little floral arrangement. And just to give these flowers a home in this vase, the vase we're actually going to paint last, whenever you're painting stems, don't just start making lines in your vase because that will not really come together at the end and it won't look natural. So you know this flower's kind of sat over to the left. So you kind of want to envision if the center of the flower is there, the stem would start there and it may angle a little bit that way. This big pink flower over here, I'm not touching my brush down, but you know the stem is going to kind of come this way, kind of come at an angle. So maybe that stem would go at that angle. This big guy right here coming straight down. So I'm just going to kind of go straight down and get that stem into the vase. And I'm just going to do the same thing with a few of these other flowers. Like this little peach guy, you know, his stem is kind of heavy. He's fallen out the side, but you know, it would kind of come in like that. This little guy would maybe come in that way. And this little guy would shoot all the way over and come like that. You just want it to be really natural and kind of eyeball where they would, where they would come in naturally. Okay, so once we do that, I'm really not going to clean this brush in the water. I'm just going to do it on the paper towel. And now I'm going to get a little bit of this sky blue. And I'm going to put that right next to the hunter green. I'm going to get a little bit more white. We didn't have very much on our palette from when we made our pattern. All right, so you've got this lighter green, you've got white, and you've got this beautiful, I got to cheat, sky blue. So no water in the brush. What we're going to do is just kind of fill this area. You can see on the finished canvas, we're going to fill this area and a little bit over here. And the only tip for doing that is load your brush, not a lot of paint and no water, and doing that same stroke that we did to create the texture in our flowers. We are going to move around that navy blue area. And the tip that I have here is don't go back and forth creating almost like subway tiles. Don't go back and forth that way, creating a consistent pattern. You kind of want to jump around. You want to do one going left, one going right. You want to move the brush from here to there and all around, because that way more paint is always on your first stroke and less paint is on your last stroke before you load more paint. And that way you've just got a really loose application of color. Does that make any sense? How are they doing, Dylan?
What color are you using again?
So this is sky blue for now.
Okay, sky blue.
Yep,
perfect.
Sky blue. And I'm going up into this area of the 2 big pink flowers, up over here, but not all the way into the corner. And then I'm going to sneak down here and do just a little bit where this peach flower meets the big pink flower. So once you have a decent coat of the sky blue, same brush, not cleaning it in water, I'm going to get a little bit of that light green that we mixed and doing that same dry brush almost square rectangle strokes. I'm going to do that just really random over the sky blue. In some areas, I'm overlapping that petal a little bit, but again, I'm keeping that navy because that navy is outlining and defining everything really beautifully. I'm going back into that sky blue and just doing that same stroke, just layering color after color, but still letting that background show. I'm going to add a little bit more sky blue right there. And then I'm going to clean that on the paper towel, but I'm going to go right into that wicker white. And I'm going to extend that up into this area, almost like a highlight in the bouquet. And then I'm going to do just a few areas to just give it almost like a spot where the light would reflect off of this bouquet. But very little paint. With very little paint, you're just getting all of that great dimension. All right, so same brush. I'm just going to stick with this number 10 flat brush. I haven't cleaned it in the water. I'm just going to clean it on the paper towel. And now I'm going to go into that 100 green and just a little bit. There's no right or wrong, so don't overthink this. Mostly the 100 green, but a little bit of that lighter green that we had mixed. All right, so on these little stems, 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to go in and starting on my chisel, which is the flat tip of your brush, I'm just going to draw little lines that go into that main stem. And all that is placement for leaves that I'm going to add in a minute. You don't want this spacing exactly. You don't want to overthink it. You just want to kind of give a home to the leaves that we're going to go back and add in a minute. And I'm going to do the same thing down here to this guy. I'm just going to do a really thin line that represents, looks like a little thorn bush. But spring is here, so we're going to load more of the 100 green. And now we're going to turn each one of those into a little leaf. I love to do a pattern in the same color that we're eventually going to paint over the top with, because then you're not working to have to cover up a pattern. A lot of times when people apply a pattern, whether they use carbon paper or a pencil, a lot of times you spend more time than you want to working to cover up. And that's something I don't want us to have to do. So that's why I love to apply a pattern with a really dry brush and almost no paint. So we're just putting leaves. And you can see they are very loose. Each one is different than the next. Sometimes I've got more of the hunter green. Sometimes I've got a little bit more of that lighter version that we mixed. Now I'm just kind of going over a few of the areas with the darker green or vice versa. If you did your first application of the leaf in the darker green, you would add a little bit of the light. But because I did mine with the light, I'm going to add a little bit of the dark. By dry brushing with the two different greens over the same leaf, you just get a really nice mix of highlights. But you still have that navy coming through. I'm going to do one more coat, not covering anything up completely, but just bringing out those leaves back to the front. Maybe your stems went over it, but you're just dry brushing those two big leaves. Maybe these little leaves that we added up here to our flowers. I'm just going into both of those greens. And just by dry brushing over the top, you get a little bit more detail. All right, so your little bouquet is really coming together. You've got all of the placement. You've kind of got, I guess, what would be the base coat for all of our little design elements. You have all those in there. So now we'll just get to the fun stuff. So I'm cleaning that number 10. I think I'm sticking with him. He's my favorite brush so far. Cleaning him in the water and removing everything on a paper towel. There we go. I'm going to get a little bit of this yellow ochre onto my palette. And now I am going to create, so kind of a fun Memphis look. Memphis, I read the best article about it actually recently on why and how it was created, but it's basically a fun geometric pattern mixed in with floral. So this little stripe kind of feels Memphis. These little dash marks feel really Memphis, and these little stripes up here. So to create that, all I'm going to do is that same technique, loading in the yellow ochre, and I'm going to fill this upper corner with little brush strokes in this really pretty yellow. I'm going to let a few of those brush strokes kind of fall off the edge of the canvas, because whenever I teach a class, what I tell everybody is we're going to focus on the top. And if you're going to frame it and you know that for sure, you don't have to worry about the edges, but do to the edge what you do to the top. So this little corner is yellow. After the class, because I don't want to spend a lot of time doing your edges, I want to teach you all the techniques for the top, but you would go back and you would match the edge of that canvas to match the top. So right here, I would add that pink color. Over here, I would add the blue that we're eventually going to add. You really want the top and the edges to match. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white, and I'm going to do that same stroke, jumping around on top of the yellow. But by just using no water and a dry brush with two colors, white and yellow ochre, you're getting all these different shades of yellow. Get a little bit more white, but not too much, because the stripes or the Memphis pattern that we add at the end is white. So you want a good bit of yellow up there. All right. Removing the yellow from that brush, but I'm going directly into that coral with a little bit of white. You just want to soften that crushed coral just a little bit. And I'm going to do that same stroke that we did, just pulling that flat edge towards the center. But I'm going to do that over the first strokes that we did. A touch of white mixed with the coral. And you're just overlapping that same stroke using the entire flat chisel edge of the brush and just setting it on the canvas and pulling it towards the center of the flower. But see how you get so much detail. You get the dark coral first, then the lighter row of petals. The navy is still coming through. Just a fun way to create all of that dimension. Get maybe a little bit more of the white, and not on all of them, but add a little bit of brightness. to these little coral flowers. All right, maybe that's enough. All right, same brush, just removing it on the paper towel, and I'm going to go directly into that yellow, and I'm just going to create a really loose center. You don't want it to be a perfect circle. You just want to do a few brush strokes in the center to kind of complete those little coral flowers. Can you guys see those? I might go and pick up just a little bit of white and just kind of highlight the center of that flower.
Kirsten, would you give us a quick close-up?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I'm always kind of wiggly. Oh. So see how the navy is coming through? Your little centers are not at all a perfect circle. Your petals are not at all a perfect petal. Not sure if that's good or bad. I hope good. Just a really fun abstract floral. How's that? Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you.
All righty. And the neat thing about this is our brush is so dry with very little paint and no water that the paint is almost dry instantly. So the fun thing about that is we're just layering and layering and layering. And none of our colors are getting muddy. All righty. I'm going to clean that brush in the water now. And now we're going to start going a little bit crazy and having a little bit of fun. So this beautiful Cayman Blue, I'm going to put some of that on my palette. And I am going to add the Cayman Blue to odd areas that you normally wouldn't in a floral arrangement. I am going to add same little water, dry brush. I'm going to add a little Cayman Blue to all of my leaves. A little bit to that one, to this big leaf right here. Maybe I'm just going to do it on one side. And then maybe I do it on both sides for the second leaf. With a style like this, you don't want anything to look exactly the same or outlined. You want a lot of overlapping and even a lot of navy blue space in between. So on these little guys, I might want a little pop of this real pretty blue, maybe just on 3 leaves. 2 and 1, you don't want it to be every other. You don't ever want to create what looks like too much order when you're doing an abstract. But same technique, dry brush, just really having fun and adding a pop of color. Now, if you want to, same brush, no water, I'm going to just add a little bit of that hunter. Maybe one leaf is too turquoise and you want to soften it a little. Just add it if you want to get a little bit more definition to your leaves. Like this one up here is really turquoise. So I'm going to add green just to one side, but let that turquoise show through. I'm actually going to take that turquoise and I'm going to just do one of my stems with a little accent of turquoise. And again, just to add some dimension. All right. I'm going to clean that brush in the water. And I'm going to go just into my Wicker White and using that same technique, I'm going to fill this corner and not a straight line, not anything exact, but I'm just going to make this upper corner solid white with the navy coming through. You don't want to outline your leaves because you want everything to be similar in your technique. So because nothing has a hard line, You don't want to create a hard line around any of your elements. So I'm adding white into that top corner. And I'm actually going to go in and add just a little bit more of this beautiful, let's say, sky blue, just to brighten that up just a little. If you don't want to add any more of the sky blue, absolutely leave your painting as it is. But I love how all of these colors just layer over and over and over, and they never get muddy. All right, how's that? So you really created almost like an abstract background, lots of navy coming through. And we are gonna, with that same brush, we're gonna add just a few highlighted areas to our vase. So I'm gonna go in this really pretty, let's see, Cayman Blue. Not gonna base coat, I'm not gonna cover up my stems. All I'm gonna do is add a few areas, almost see it as the reflection or the, maybe the way a vase, a natural blue clear glass vase, has a little bit of a darker and a little bit of a lighter area, depending on how the light catches it. So very little water. I'm just adding a little bit of this Cayman Blue just to start building the reflections in that vase. How's it going? Not one person. Everyone's so quiet. Anyone got any questions over there, Dylan?
No, I think everybody's enjoying this. And
I love that.
We've got a lot of people that don't necessarily have your exact colors. And like you said at the beginning, you know, if you have some colors that are close to it, you know, if you don't have this exact Cayman Blue, feel free to experiment with a different color.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of possibilities here.
Absolutely. So now we've got our background built, all of our little leaves have a home, our stems. All I'm going to do is add a little bit of detail to these big pink flowers. And to do that, I need a little bit more of this magenta on my palette, not too much. I'm going to do those same strokes, not covering the entire flower, but just really random, moving around. You can see when you're working on a dark background, the most amazing thing to me, and it'll be hard to see here, but you can see it at home, the same color looks different and looks richer the second time you add the same color. So that is just magenta dry on that navy background. And now I'm adding just magenta again. But the magic of the dark background is when you add a second layer of the same color, you get that much more dimension. It's all because of that dark background. And then I'm going to dip that same brush that was dipped in the magenta into that crushed coral. And I'm going to do a few of those strokes back and forth, not creating a daisy pattern like we did here, but almost like maybe a peony or a carnation, where it's just hundreds of little flowers that create the details. So I'm just using that crushed coral, a little bit of the magenta, depending on the shade that you want your flower. I'm not going everywhere on the flower, just kind of focusing a little bit more on the center, but not creating, you know, an exact center like we did. And then if you want to, that is a great little, again, I'm not great with my flowers, but maybe a peony or a What are my favorite flowers? I'm not gonna know. Zinnia maybe, where they just have thousands and thousands of petals. You could leave this like this. In fact, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of white and just do a few, I need more white on my palette. I'm gonna show you 2 ways to finish this flower. So magenta and a little bit of white, and you could do just that same stroke to highlight different areas of that flower. You're really just jumping back and forth between the white, the coral, and the magenta. And whichever color you want your flower to mostly represent is the color you'll use the most of. So that is a great way to finish that flower. If you want it to look a little bit more like a rose, you can go into that crushed coral and just kind of do a little spiral, still not with a ton of paint, because you want all of that dimension that we built up with our base coat to show through. But you just want to create that little spiral that kind of defines your flower a little bit more. See how it just adds layer after layer? But you guys can see I've added maybe 4 or 5 colors, magenta, magenta again, and you still have the navy, which allows you to see the canvas texture, which gives you all of that great depth. All right, so we've kind of got our canvas built, or our majority of our painting done. I am going to clean that largest flat brush. This is the 3/4 inch. Dry that on a paper towel. And all I'm going to do is add, we've got so much texture up here. I'm going to add just the littlest bit of texture to the background of the canvas. I'm putting a little bit of the licorice or the black onto my palette. It's already so dark with the navy. I'm going to load that black just like we've been loading everything. Not too much paint and no water. And I'm just going to dry brush just the edge. We wanted the light colors to show through. We want the navy to still show through, even though we're doing black over such a dark navy. I'm just doing the edge, really just to add some dimension. Can you guys see that? It's probably hard to see. Navy over black. Not covering up all the navy, but just allowing that black back or the navy blue background to have some texture like all of our flowers do. And then that same brush, I'm going to just barely go into that Cayman, and that same dry brush, really random strokes. I'm going to add kind of that same feel that we created in our flowers. Just so the top and the bottom match. Lots of texture, a little bit of texture down there. So it all kind of comes together. Now I'm going to go back to that number 10 flat brush. Get that clean and dry. And then we're going to do the vase. So the vase is mostly white with all that beautiful reflection. So what I'm going to do first is I am just going to really create a hard edge on both sides of our vase. But don't forget your 2 leaves that are right there overlapping. They're on the top of the glass. So I'm going to kind of separate those from the glass. I am going to create a top, just a little line, just to represent. And then I'm just going to lightly stroke a little bit over my stems. but you don't want to cover those up. They're behind the glass, so you don't want them to be really bold, but you want them, you know, to still be in there so it looks really natural and organic. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of that Cayman Blue. And I'm just jumping all around that vase area. I'm actually going to go right back into that hunter green, and where I lost some of my stems, I'm going to add those right back in. I can still see them. You don't want them to be perfect because they're behind the glass in the vase and they have reflection over them. Cleaning off that brush, I'm going to get a little bit of that really pretty sky blue, which is that gray blue. I'm just going to add that just to a few sections of our vase, but never fully base coating anything and covering up the background, and never creating a pattern. And then the last color I'm going to use is just mostly the white. I just really want to define that vase. So maybe this side is picking up more of the light. Maybe the water is only that high, so that line would kind of represent the water line. Get more paint on your palette if you need it. Always go through a lot of the Wicker White. But you just really want to give kind of a base. The base is clear with those really nice highlights of blue, which could be the background coming through, the glass reflecting, all of that. All right, so now the fun stuff. I am going to get our smaller, so this is my number 2 flat brush, and all I'm going to do is the fun details. So I need even more Wicker White. Up here on the yellow, I'm just going to do a really fun, really organic stripe. And I'm just stopping it before it meets the blue. So there's no right or wrong. We're just doing a fun Memphis pattern that's kind of combining with our florals in the vase. You can see the spacing is not perfect. The lines aren't perfect, but because our canvas is that modern look, we don't want our lines perfectly straight. Using that same brush, I'm going to create this fun modern pattern over this blue-green area. And to do that, all I'm going to do is almost like little hash marks, almost like dashes. But the same rule, you don't want to create a pattern. You don't want to go left to right or up and down. You can see they're almost like little patches. So that's a patch of 7. I'm going to jump over here and do maybe a patch of 3. Maybe I'll scoot up here and space a few further apart. I'm going to jump over here and do maybe a little patch of 4 with one odd guy that snuck out. You want to focus in odds just because they always say odds are more pleasing to the eye. And each little dash is a different shape. I'm going to clean that brush and go right into the Cayman Blue. I don't know why I'm struggling with Cayman Blue. I forget the name every single time. But I'm doing a little bit bigger dashes, but not any particular order. I'm just really making that area fun and modern. And if this is something that is not something that would match your home decor, or you don't want to do this modern Memphis look, don't do this. You can leave any step that I do. You can leave that absolutely off of your painting. I just want you guys to learn as many great techniques as I can teach you in an hour. All right, so I'm going to clean that brush. I'm still using that little flat brush When it's that little, it's really not a flat brush anymore, but it's a number 2. Add some black to your palette. If yours is almost gone, like mine is. Now up here in the white section, just like we did with the yellow, I added white stripes over there. I'm going to do that same thing and add black stripes over the white. Now, I said no water, and I know I'm not using water. This licorice has always been one of our thickest FolkArt acrylics. So you can add just a touch of water if it allows your stripes to paint a little bit better. But you don't want to add so much that you get drips. I added just the littlest bit, almost just wetting your brush and then mixing it in that licorice. But you can see my stripes are not exact. They're just really fun and natural. A little bit more water just to get that paint moving a little. It's just fun. I love pattern and florals together. I love it so much. And then those same little hash marks, I'm going to do them extra small. So the white ones are medium, the turquoise are big, and these black ones are the smallest, but all using more or less of the tip of the same brush. Dylan, I'm convinced it's just you and me. No one's made a peep.
We got 300 people painting along. So
well, they are quiet as mice.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So all I'm doing just for the fun little things at the very end is these little pops of color. So this is that magenta. I picked up another little flat brush. I think this is a number 6. If you want to add these in the crushed coral, if you want to add these in the yellow, whatever color, but all I'm going to do is pick up some of that magenta and do that same stroke, those little, almost Andy would know exactly, little hash strokes, I call them. I don't know why, but I'm just going to repeat those, not creating a pattern, maybe thinner at the end, like the end of all these little wildflowers always get thinner at the end. I'm going to do a little bit right here. I'm going to clean that brush on the paper towel, just a tiniest bit of white, and just the same stroke right over the top of that magenta. Looks like a highlight. I want them a little brighter, so I'm going to go right back into that magenta. And maybe on a few of them, not all of them. I'll add a little bit of that magenta. But you're just creating a little wildflower that's coming out of this bouquet. All right, then back to our little number 2 flat brush. Add a little water if your licorice is really rich and creamy and thick. And then envision this brush that it is a pencil, because you all are so confident with a pencil. And we are just going to sketch. We are not going to outline. We're not going to be exact, but we are just going to have fun and doodle and sketch just a few of the details on our canvas. So I'm going to go down that stem, not perfect, not exact. I'm going to outline the leaves. But you guys can see, I hope you guys can see, it's kind of a dark color. You can see it's really just a doodle. It's outlining it, but it's not exact. That's probably a hard one to see. But just a really fun, almost like you're using a pencil and you're doodling. And then I'm going to connect each little leaf to the stem. So you're creating that vine. Is that too dark? Can you guys see that at all, Dylan?
Yeah, we see it really clear.
Kind of. Okay. So you're just sketching or doodling the last little details, but making sure that each one is a little bit different. And then creating a center line, connecting it all back. Just a little bit of water so your paint moves. I'm going to do that stem as well. And connecting each leaf back to that main stem, outlining these two big leaves, and then giving them a little vein in the center. Same with these little leaves up at the top. And then same brush, same black, just a few little dots. Not perfect polka dots, but just a really loose detail in the center of our little coral flowers. I'm going to do one or two little lines. I don't want to do each stem, but I just kind of want to accent or represent those stems. Maybe a few little brush strokes to kind of create a shadow around the vase. And I think that might be all of our detail. You've got fun pattern. You've got almost like a doodled outline, a sketch that makes it fun and modern. And then you've got all of that fun layered shading, highlighting, and the beautiful texture of the canvas. So all of that is doable because of the dark base coat. So that is really why I love working on a dark base coat. So then once it's all dry, you can frame it. You can finish up the edges. Make sure you sign your painting. Did anybody have any questions at all?
No, but would you show your painting a little bit closer so everybody can get one good last look?
Definitely. Oh, that might be too high. How's that?
Perfect.
So you can see all the navy coming through. Lots of different colors coming through, and they look different on that dark background. Oh, I hope everybody had a fun class. I hope their flowers. Our favorite thing is when you guys hashtag and add them to Plaid Crafts and to Michael's, because we love to see what you guys have painted. So nobody has any more questions? Oh, let me show you guys what next Monday is. So this is so cute. So Chris is teaching Monday's class. And oh my gosh, how cute is he? She's teaching this adorable little chick holding this little daisy. So she's teaching this. She told me to tell you guys this. She's teaching this. This is her supplies. But look at this. She wanted to show you guys that the same thing that you're learning to paint, you can add to different size paintings or wood surfaces. So this is next week's class. Does it get any cuter than that? So that'll be Chris next Monday, same time. All right. So if nobody has any questions, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We had the best time, and we hope to see you next Monday. Hashtag your projects because we love to see what everyone created. Thanks. Bye.
Bye, guys.